Question 5. What are important goals and objectives for students studying to be educational and school psychologists? I apologize for the quality of the film. I'm recording on this laptop that looks crazy, but and also for the noises that you'll probably hear because I couldn't find a quiet spot and I have craziness going on. But anyway, as you all know, I previously taught as a bilingual education teacher. It was a high need area, low SES, um, a challenging area. Around 10% of the children that are enrolled in public schools are classified as ELLs. They're the fastest growing group of students. In Texas and other border states like California, they have high number of ELLs in their school districts. The National Center for Educational Statistics for 2015 and the 2016 school year reported that in Texas, those percentages of ELLs were higher than 10%. Unfortunately, these students also have the highest dropout rate, the lowest achievement scores, the largest mobility rate, and the highest poverty rate, and the highest grade retention rate. Those are significant challenges to overcome. One of my major goals as a school psychologist would be to competently and effectively provide school psychological services to bilingual students and their families in the communities where I previously was a teacher. That was kind of the whole reason that I wanted to become a school psychologist. This would entail becoming knowledgeable about things like the Model for Comprehensive and Integrated School Psychological Services, which is comprised of 10 domains. These domains include providing academic, social, behavioral, and emotional interventions that are empirically based, of course. So educational and mental health services, applying knowledge of psychology and educational theory, consulting and collaborating with various stakeholders, parents, teachers, the like, and making decisions based on data. The ethical code of conducts, NASP has theirs, APA has theirs, are also necessary to be knowledgeable. I would need to be knowledgeable about those. Specifically, providing services to bilingual students is different than providing services to monolingual learners. And as a school psychologist, I'd have to be knowledgeable about some of those differences that each group would have. Specifically, the ELLs, the English language learners, I would need to know about the language proficiency and the different levels that can be present with English language learners. For instance, academic language, also known as CALPS, takes about 5 to 7 years to develop. 5 to 7 years, that's a long time. Currently, ELLs are disproportionately represented in special education. According to Sullivan 2011, the national average of students in SPED is about 9%, but the average for ELLs ranges from 0 to 17%. So it's either almost double or nothing. This demonstrates that in many places there is either under-identification or over-identification. In the lower grades, below third, it's under-representation, and in the higher, after you pass third grade, it's over-representation. This disparity could in part be due to the lack of knowledge about the language acquisition process. Remember those 5 to 7 years for academic language. Just recently on the NASP message boards or the forums, a school psychologist was asking for assistance with choosing which assessments to give an ELL student who they were sure, needed some, I don't remember the exact wording, but it was an ELL student that had recently arrived to the U.S., and they were trying to choose which assessments to give, and some of the recommendations that were shared were telling her not to rush with the determination process and consider previous schooling or lack thereof. Also, current proficiency levels in English, and very importantly, the child's proficiency in their native language. Many times, students may not be proficient in their home language. I've seen this in my own experience as a bilingual teacher, that students can lack academic vocabulary, content knowledge in their native language. So it's even more difficult in the L2 or their second language. Something else to consider is the emotional response or the emotional state that they're in after the transition to this new academic environment, this new country possibly. Um, for many children, or for some children, this migration process can be dangerous and it can be a traumatic experience. So their emotional state also needs to be assessed. Something else that we would want to mention would be, or that we would want to find information about, is the parents' educational level. Sullivan 2011 found that linguistically and culturally diverse students are receiving inadequate or inappropriate psychoeducational assessment practices. They have restricted access to effective instruction. There's a lack of understanding about the language acquisition process or how prior academic experiences in one or more of the languages is associated with or impacts their academic achievement, and the grade level expectations that should be associated with that. There's also inappropriate special education referral practices being utilized with those culturally and linguistically diverse students. And school psychologists are receiving limited training for assessing this group of students. All this has been found to contribute to the disproportionality phenomena. Another finding was that it was hard to find assessments that validly assess English language learners. It was noted that just because an assessment is in Spanish doesn't mean that it's valid. I saw somewhere that there were more than 400 assessments that it can assess in Spanish, but it doesn't guarantee the validity. Just because an assessment was created in Spanish doesn't mean that it's appropriate for a student that's an English language learner. A lot of those tests were created in Spanish-speaking areas where those are monolingual children. Those are children that speak Spanish only. So it's not appropriate to use those assessments when assessing an English language learner, because it's not the same context, the same educational context. So there's a lot of factors that need to be considered, and that's one of my goals, is to become competent and effective when assessing English language learners and when advocating and building relationships with the families in the community that service those children. Thank you.